Okay, let's start. Welcome everybody to the Chebec webinar. We are today on the third webinar. It's the final one of the first part of our webinar. It's the framework part. And today is very hands-on lesson about tools to design your project. We will have Francesca Lambertini, my colleague from Strategie Culturali, and Patrizia Braga from MeltingPro. As usual, I remind you, we are here thanks to the Interreg project Chebec, Med Chebec, and with the collaboration of the Municipality of Bologna and the Incredible project. Some of you are also beneficiary of Incredible project, more than beneficiary of Chebec. And today we are with MeltingPro. So it's the last of the first part. I remind you the registrations for the second part of this webinar series are already opened. Please follow the link you received from Zoom to register to new webinars. The next one will be on Creative Europe program, and then we will have case studies. Now you find on Zoom more details, and you should also receive from Chebec partners more details about the case studies and experience presented. Then we will have a focus on Erasmus Plus and other case studies on the same week. And then we will have another programs lesson about Horizon 2020's main instrument and so on. And the final case studies meeting. We are planning, we are already planning a final roundtable, but we still don't have the date, so let's keep in touch for this. I remind you, you can ask questions during this webinar. Francesca will start in few minutes, and then will be the Patrizia intervention. You can ask questions through Q&A section, but also through the chat. Please remind to make questions visible to all participants and all speakers. Everybody should see questions. And you can also ask on the chat to make an intervention, to ask something or to say something during the webinar. But we will also have a final half an hour to exchange question and answer through the chat or speaking. Massimo can always give you voice because you can't enable your mic yourself. Sorry, it's a Zoom webinar. And are already available the first two video recordings on YouTube. You can access them from the Incredible website, but I think if you were registered to the previous webinar, you already received the link, and there is a playlist. So if you have to leave this webinar earlier, you can see the final part afterwards. So feel free to see as much as you want these videos. Ready, steady. I give voice to Francesca. See you later.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? Maybe I'll ask someone from Rosanna or Massimo just to switch on their cameras and say, okay. Okay, perfect. So I can start. So everybody, hello. My name is Francesca Lambertini, and I'm very happy to be here with you today. As Rosanna, okay. Sorry, here we go. As Rosanna already told you and told us, today we will have an overview of some of different approaches to one of the, I would say, most hot topic for those who, like us and MeltingPro, work in the cultural and creative sector, so the project design. Me and Patrizia will talk a little bit about some different characteristics and tools of two different approaches that we both use in our work daily life. But I would say that they have a primary strategic element. They are orientated towards the beneficiaries and their specific needs. Well, we will, this is the main schedule for today. I will speak for about 40-45 minutes about the logical framework and project cycle management. Then we will have 10-minute break just for a quick coffee. And then Patrizia will talk a little bit about the second approach that we would like to introduce to you today, that is the design thinking and co-design approach. Okay. As I said before, these are the two main approaches that we are looking at today. And as I said, unfortunately, we don't have so much time, and so we cannot investigate in deep a lot of issues. So please feel free and interrupt us whenever you want questions. Okay, so just to share some common glossary, as I said, we will focus on project design, but maybe it's better to start with what do we mean when we say a project. So what does project means for us? I started to report here what does project mean for the manuals and the theory of the project management. And so they define the project as a series of activities aimed at bringing about clearly specified objectives, so goals, within a defined time and period and with a defined budget. The main elements that a project should have for sure are the definition of its stakeholders, both primary target groups and final beneficiaries. Of course, it has to clearly define the coordination, management, and financing arrangements. It has to have a monitoring and evaluation system, and of course, it has to it needs a budget and to cover all the expected costs. As you know, a project is an additional funding to your ongoing activities. So this is what, let's say, the theory from maybe the last century used to define a project. For us, I would say that a project underlines a change in the future, and it aims to alter an existing situation. So it also produces relevant and enhancing results comparing to the previous existing context and toward specific beneficiaries. And so you can understand that if we relate it to this definition, how the beneficiaries have a new central role. Just to close this brief introduction, I would just introduce you what is the so-called project life cycle, and it is an ongoing process that starts from the programming and identification of the actions that that then leads to their formulation and implementation. And those actions that you design in your project and you realize thanks to your project should be always evaluated and receive an audit. This is a life cycle, because also inside your project, generally, you have the opportunity, if you adopt this kind of approach, to redesign and rethinking those activities who are not consistent with some of the objectives you defined. Today, we will focus more on the project design phase. So in the first two phases, those between programming and identification of needs of the needs of our beneficiaries, and so the definition of the goals of our project. Okay, so I will go on, and I don't interrupt. I will interrupt just once in a while to ask you if you have some questions. So don't worry, just if you have questions, just write them in the chat. What about project cycle management? I am sure that a lot of you have has already heard about this approach. Actually, it is a real methodology for conceiving a project and managing its activities, and the most important decision-making moments throughout its entire life cycle. So when we speak about project cycle management, we are thinking about something that help us in the conceiving part, but also in the managing part of the activities of the project. At the basis of this methodology, there's this theory that is called LFA, so the logical framework approach. The logical framework approach is actually the approach that we will look deeper today with me. Actually, it is an analytical process that orders all the elements of a project, and it causally concatenates them. It also helps the project designer to identify the field of actions and the possibility of intervention of each project. And one of its main characteristics is to set a system of indicators that will help the project designer to measure the achievements of the objectives and to facilitate those circular and continuous path of redesigning of the activities. Okay, so as I said before, today we are looking into the design phase, and I'm sorry, but also the design phase of each project, if we follow the LFA approach, has its own life cycle. So again, LFA advises advises project designer to have a lot of analysis to know very in deep the context of in which they will operate. And first of all, it suggests to conduct a stakeholder analysis. So it means that it suggests to identify the beneficiaries of and the primary target groups, and underline their major problems that we want to address with our project, but also to highlight those potentials that our stakeholders can have and that we can use in our designing process. The second tool that LFA gives us is the problem analysis, and this is, from my point of view, one of the most important aspect and phase of and content of everything. And through the problem analysis, we can let the key problems of our beneficiaries emerge in a participatory and listening approach. And in this way, we can also focus on the constraints and the opportunity of the context, and we can determine some cause-effect relationships that will be very helpful in the third analysis, that is the so-called objectives analysis. So the one that, moving from the problem scheme, will help the project designer to co-design the future desired situation, moving from the identified problems. I'm sorry to tell you that LFA also advise project designer to continue to follow a path that has 3 other steps. The fourth one is the strategy design and project logic. So it helps to define the bundle of activities that compose your project, and it's the phase in which you should formulate objectives in measurable terms and defining means and cost. This is the part of the project design phase which we go more in practice, because after that we should have the activity scheduling. So we will determine the sequence of duration of each activity and estimate the duration, and highlight the most important milestone throughout all the project. Of course, last, but as we always said, not least, is the resource scheduling. So your design project cycle is ended only when you will be able to develop all the inputs that you think are necessary to reach your goals, and when you will be able to draw a proper budget derived from the activity scheduling. Is everything clear until now? If someone has questions or want to share something, stop me. Okay. So, as you know, we have some time constraints. Actually, I think that we would need many more hours to go in deep of each analysis, and so in the whole life cycle of a project design method. But due to our time constraints of today, we will focus just on one phase, that is the problem analysis one, that in my opinion, and it's only my opinion, is the most important one, or at least for me is often the most difficult one to approach. And so this is why I choose to focus on it. Okay, so problem analysis, as we said, is the second step of the so-called project design life cycle, as LFA define it. And I would say that is the phase in which the participatory aspect of this approach emerges most. This is actually because if you want your project to truly generate a change for someone, sometimes you have to ask them what are their needs, what are their problems, and then you can face them. So as an advice, I would tell you to, if it's possible, to meet your stakeholders, and virtually, as we are doing, or also in person if possible, and let them tell you what problems they feel more urgent, of course, related to a specific theme or macro theme or territory that will be the, how can I say, the framework in which your project will be. In my opinion, if you are able to understand which are the problems and the needs of your main beneficiaries, it is, how can I say, more probable that the action and the strategy that you will design in your project will be more consistent and relevant, and so the results of your project will be better, and will produce a bigger change in the context and towards your beneficiaries. Okay, so problem analysis actually is also a procedure that allows you, when I say you, I mean the project design team, to analyze an existing situation and an existing context, to identify the key problems in this context, and it also gives you the opportunity to visualize the problems in a diagram, actually in a tree diagram, that we will see in a few slides. Some tips. If I have to advise you in how to run a problem analysis, I would first of all advise you to involve your key stakeholders that actually you should have identified through the stakeholders analysis, as we have seen before. And second of all, it will be great if you can collect data about their vision and their needs. Of course, you can collect data in a lot of different ways, but for sure, if you are able to organize a sort of workshop session, it will be very, very useful. And if you are able and you can do it, it will be better if you use an external facilitator so that you can be just an observer. Sorry, just an observer, and you can totally focus on the discussions. If you are able, if you can organize this sort of workshop or focus group, be sure to have clear ideas. I mean, you have to be able to provide a detailed description of the macro themes, of those framework of scope of action in which you intend to realize the project, so that you can give your the stakeholder who came to your focus group or workshop session a framework inside which they can they can give you more inputs as possible. Of course, be sure that you use a listening approach, and you don't enter into the merit of the discussion that will be generated inside the workshop. Okay, here we are to introduce you how a problem analysis can be. I decided to use an example because, in my opinion, it can be one of the easiest way. So what I suggest you is to just follow me in this explanation, and again ask questions, because maybe this is a little bit more hands-on part of my intervention. The example that we will see in a while refers to a co-design session that we led to identify new solution for reaching and involving groups of youngsters in the activity of a museum. So this is the context in which we used this, we conducted this problem analysis. So thanks to our focus group, some of the problems that emerged from our stakeholder are those that you can read in this slide. So some of them said that they registered one of their most relevant problem was that there's a low percentage of young people who go to museums. Some other underlined the poor visibility of the museums among young people, leisure time offers, and channel of communication. Some other make it visible that actually their museum wasn't organizing events, or just few events addressed to the target. Some other told us that the educational activity in the museum were not frequently and not regular, so it was difficult to communicate them, while some other just underlined the fact that young people were distant from the cultural institutions in general. Some other told us how they registered a decrease in school visits to museums, while one of the last problems that emerged was that there was a lack, a nearly total lack of communication addressed to youngsters in museums. So this is what, I mean, this is a part actually of what came out in that focus group. Our job then was to organize these problems in a way that can become a sort of matrix in thanks to which we could understand better which problem were the causes of some other problems. So with the not a little, how can I say, difficulties, or what we designed is this thing. This is what is defined as a problem tree analysis scheme. So the logic at the base, I think it's very easy. You just try to separate the problem in a cause-effect relation, and so you try to underline what are the problems that are at the base, and the relation among those leads to some consequent problems. And again, following the same cause-effect relation, the consequent problem leads you to identify the specific problem. I see that there's a question. Once you are able to find out what the specific problem is, you have done, no, I'm joking, but you really reached a super goal. I mean, in this case, the specific problem is actually will be the main objective to which our project will lead. If I'm not wrong, someone asked something. C'è una domanda, okay. Do you have some question? Because they are telling me that maybe. What's the best way to find the problem? Ciao Pierluigi, nice to meet you. The best way to find the problem is actually ask your stakeholders and target groups. I mean, when you have defined a proper, as I said before, context in which and framework in which you want to decline your project, then you have to really look for those people who you want to address your activities, and actually ask them what are their problems to it. Any suggestions or tool for this kind of activities? I think that maybe later Patrizia will touch this point and also give us some interesting tools for this to answer your questions. I can say that for sure the focus group is still a tool that can work very well, especially in my opinion in our sector. Do I have answered your questions? Great, bye. Go Pierluigi, I read your question. I have a tip of water while you write. Yeah. but it seems okay. No, sorry, Pierluigi. Maybe I just went. I was just a little bit too fast in this in the things I've said, so I can go back to this slide and we will have it clear. No, not this one. Ecco, here we are. Actually, the first analysis that LFA advise you to do is the stakeholder analysis. This means that is a phase in which you identify the beneficiaries, you list them, you list the groups, and you prioritize them. So this is a sort of mapping of the stakeholders, the first phase. The second one, that is the problem analysis phase, starts from the first one, and it tells you, okay, this is our list. Now let's choose among them some people that for us are the most representative and ask them some questions, invite them to a focus group or to a workshop, and let's find what are their main needs and problems. Okay, I'll go back. Okay, let me read. If you back, okay. Okay, Pierluigi is saying, I think everybody can read him. He's saying that, I mean, this is the more important than the first one. And yes, I totally agree with you. This is why I just focus on this one without, let's say, losing time on the first one, because this, in my opinion, this is really the core of all the project design activities. The first one is a propedeutic activity. If you don't list and you don't identify your beneficiaries and your stakeholders, for sure you cannot invite them to a focus group. Have I answered you? Okay, great. Okay, so this is the scheme. Wait, another message. Okay, perfect. So this is, let's say, the scheme that the problem 3 analysis scheme. If you are able to design some, and of course in this case it's a little bit simplified one, but actually there can be more branches, and in this case there are just 2. Generally you find more branches, but of course, in this way, I just simplified a little bit. So what's the next phase is here. Okay, so once you have, as I said, once you have succeeded in designing this scheme, that in my opinion is really one of the most critical parts of the project design process, you can more easily identify the objectives, the goals of your project, and the fields of action towards which you can always later concentrate your creative superpower. But first of all, you have to fix problems, and from them define objects and the fields of actions. Okay, I have a. Okay, so. How can you transform a problem tree analysis scheme to an objective tree analysis scheme? It's not that difficult. You have just to transform, let's say, pass from a negative point of view, the problem one, to a positive point of view. So you have to translate your problems in objectives, in let's say also in how can I say, in objectives, in goals that you want to reach. In this, and I think this is a very easy transformation. Once you have done this one, you the LFA advises you to find out what are the main, how can I say, what are the main thematic clusters in which the objectives can be clusterized. In our example, we could underline two different thematic clusters. One was let's say the education and learning side of the museums, and the other one was the communication and PR, event organization. I think in this case, I mean, it's you as a project designer. It's just up to you as a project designer to read the results of your focus group or whatever other tool you choose to apply, and to organize it in coherent clusters. In this way, in this example that is very simple and simplified, actually a project can think to work in both of the clusters. Sometimes some problem branches are connected to some context scenarios that cannot be addressed or solved by one project. In that case, of course, my advice when you go to write, for example, an application, is always better to let your evaluator, if we are thinking about an application, let them know that you have an overview of all the problems that are in a specific context, but that you are also, how can I say, enough rational to understand that something is a higher level and cannot be solved with just one project. So when you arrive to this situation, actually you have done. I mean, really, in this case, we are nearly close to have everything, because you have just then in this moment how can I say, the dialogue and the listening phase with our stakeholder is ended. This is when us, like project designer, become to work. I mean, to structure all the activities of the project. And it's also the phase in which we have to decide if we want that our action work in all the clusters, or if we want to concentrate just on one or some of the clusters that we have seen. Sometimes, sorry, there's something in Italian. Sometimes it happens that you decide to focus just on a branch, just on a cluster, and this can be really intelligent, let's say, because if you understand that you don't have, your project will not be able to have all the resources that can be budget, but also competencies or personal, maybe it's better to concentrate and focus just on a cluster and work deeply on it to try to reach those objectives. Okay, it seems quite schematic, but I would say that if you can manage to arrive to this point, actually now you have built your system of objectives, and from it you will be able to proceed in your project design process, and so you will be able to identify the strategy and the action that will compose your project. And then I have to close because I know that I am nearly done. But my advice, if you decide once to choose this kind of approach, of methodology, is also when you first how can I say, do your brainstorming about your activities. Try to put each activities in connection with all the problems or objectives that you have found. It will really help you to build a structure that is relevant and consistent for your target groups. Okay, this is what I've already said, and I think that for the moment I'm done, but I'm here to listen to some other questions, or also share some practices. Maybe if some of you has already tried this approach and wants to tell us something, how did it work, and what are your feedback, I will be very happy to listen and maybe to exchange some practices. Okay. So actually, I think that Rosanna or Massimo, would you? Because actually, I thought that my intervention would last longer, but actually, I made it quicker. So maybe we can just go on with Patrizia and postpone our break, or would you prefer to do your break now?
I think we could have a break now, 10 minutes, and then there will be the Patrizia intervention. Okay, are you okay with this? Okay. See you then.
Okay.
Okay, see you in a while. Vado? Okay, so let's start again, guys. Hi, it's nice to meet you. I'm Patrizia from MeltingPro. And let's see in the next 30-45 minutes another way to tackle with designing projects. What I'm talking about, it's about design thinking and human-centered approach. So we are going to pass through four steps, basically. So 4 phases, let's say: defining the problem, defining the design brief, so how to really understand which is the right questions of this problem, finding solutions, so how to generate ideas, and then developing solutions. Massimo, Rosanna, which problem, yeah, just open your mic and tell me, because I can't see the chat in this moment, so just tell me, thank you. So let's go on, let's move on and see what I'm talking about. So what is the human-centered design? Human-centered design is a creative approach to problem solving. It's a process that starts with the people you are designing for and ends with new solutions that are tailor-made to suit their needs. So it's really like the name, human-centered, it means that is really rooted on people, like the one Francesca was telling before. This is also structure, but maybe it's a little bit more creative in some parts, but they are both, as Francesca told you, really focused on people, on target group. So human-centered design is all about building a deep empathy with people. This is, guys, very, very important. And I will give you some tips on how to try to empathize, or how to learn to develop the empathy, which is not so easy most of the time for us. So it's really about building a deep empathy with the people you are designing for. It's about generating ideas, building prototypes, and sharing what you have made with people you are designing for. And eventually, if you have good feedbacks, you can put your innovative solution out into the world. So the design thinking is what we use. It's about prototyping, and try also to deal with your team and your organization to better understand the unmet needs of the people you are creating for, like customers, clients, students. It's about reducing the risk associated with launching new ideas or products, because design thinking, as we will see, this is just an introduction, it's really about how we can prototype something in order to understand if this service, product, or ideas can really meet the expectation and the needs of our market and of our target group. So it's about prototyping. And then it's useful to generate solutions that are revolutionary, not just incremental. And it's useful because you can learn and iterate faster. Iterate, guys, it's really one of the key points of design thinking approach, because the iteration, which means, like Francesca was saying, the circular things that you have really, once you get to the end, you prototype and you have your feedback, you can start again and see if really works or not. I mean, it's a question of always iterate some phases in order to have constantly feedbacks from your target group to understand if your service or product is working or not. Iterate approach affords us to gain validation along the way. And this, the theme of validation is really, really important. So that's why iteration it's important. You can use design thinking in business, in government, education, non-profit. So consider that we are using for cultural organization to develop a product or services. So I will describe you what we are developing also, and thanks to European projects. Some of this matrix and slides comes from European project like Adeste Plus, for example, and it's the product of sharing knowledge among partners, European partners. That's why it's really, really useful to understand how to design project together, because you can really innovate also your own services thanks to the confrontation and the sharing of the knowledge with the other people. So let's start with the structure, the general structure of the design thinking. The double diamond process. What does it mean? The double diamond is divided into 4 phases. The first one, in 2 diamond. The first diamond, it's about defining what is the problem, the real problem we are going to solve. And the second diamond is about what is the solution. Let's be concentrated in the first diamond, which is split into 2 phases. The first one is discover insight into the problem. What does it mean? It means that in the first half of the diamond, the first diamond, what we are going to do is try to collect whatever insight, information, needs that we can have from our beneficiary and from our market. Basically is collecting opinions, feelings, insight, inputs, information from our target group in the most quantitative and qualitative way is possible. After collecting all this information, we can converge a little bit our thinking and our work, because we have a lot of information. So we have to converge a little bit and define the areas to focus upon. Let's say, really understand which is the right question we have to ask to ourselves to develop a solution. Then, so after this diamond, we come to a problem definition, and we arrive to a proper question to ask ourselves. In the second diamond, we try to understand and to find out some solution. So again, the first half is very divergent. So this means that we can collect as much as possible information to solutions, as possible solution that we can collect in a brainstorming way. That's good. And afterwards, I will show you some ways how to go through this process. And after we collect all the information, well, all the ideas that we can have, we try to converge and decide which of this generation ideas phase which are the best and which is the best to try to prototype. So I know it's not easy if you have never seen this diamond, but let's go through the entire presentation, and that at the end you can really ask to myself lots of things, because this is a very big and complex process. So it's not easy to try to sum up, but don't worry, because I prepare for you a lot of information in case you want to deep this methodology. So consider that we have this structure, and basically the structure is, we saw different steps into the structure. The most important thing is at the beginning is the phase of empathize, how to empathize. So get to know the point of view of community, observation, anecdotal, try to collect information also through immersive experience, personal and interpersonal focus group and relationship in order to really understand not just the needs, but also the barriers, the motivations, and all the things that people leads to people to decide if buying or going to your service or product or not. Then after empathizing, so after having really put into your beneficiary shoes, because empathizing this is what it is. So once you put yourself into somebody else's shoes, you try to describe and quantify the needs, the interests, and preferences. So try to systematize this information in order to, and then we go to the third steps, to ideate, so to develop a wide range of ideas. It's better if we involve the people in the community. So not just in the first phase, in the collecting information phase, but also during the ideation phase, it would be very, very important to collect also feedback from our target group through focus group, brainstorming, interview, postcards, diaries. I will show you, and I will give you some links that have different tools to use, as Pierluigi was asking earlier. After this generation of ideas, we can start to create a representation or minimal version of our prototype, of our idea. Then we try out with the audience in order to, this idea, in order to gather feedback and share results where possible, because after this testing, we have to collect information and then understand if we have to go back to the first step or just, to go back and understand what can be improved, what worked, and what can be improved. Why design thinking? I stole this amazing slide from one of our partners, which is the audience agencies, because I think that is really, really describe some situation in which we find ourselves, that sometimes people, the expert design things without an immersive confrontation, without really asking and observe and think and ask about people and users what is the best for them. And this is what happens frequently, that people try to find a more comfort way to go through it. So that's why it's very important to start a participatory design process. That means involve in each phases, in the most phases, the more phases you can, your customers, your clients, your visitors, because in this way it's more probably that you can match their needs. Why design thinking? I would just tell that it's very useful in our, in our opinion, because it's insight driven, so it's based on intuition and data. It's centered, and it's people centered and collaborative. The stakeholders are involved, and this is very important from the beginning till the end of the process. The emphasis is on users' perspectives and needs. The most important thing is that identify the problem, not dictate the solutions. A lot of times we really try to solve problems that are not the ones that really can change our professional services. So it's really, really important, as Francesca was saying earlier, that we identify the right problem to deal with and to tackle. It's important because the feedback are on tangible prototypes, which is the key. It's not just about theoretical, but tangible, practical. So it's really useful to understand what is working and what's not. Quick iteration to design the product and experience are important, because you don't have to deal with big problem. You try to split the problems into a smaller problem in order that you can try to solve each small problem. And in this situation, you can really solve the bigger one. Of course, selecting properly the ones that are relevant for you. And this is very useful because it's a recipe for learning by doing. This is really about doing, thinking and doing, asking and redoing. It's a question of not thinking that we are failing, because failing is a key to innovate, but failing is a part of the process, because if you fail, you can really ask and understand what was wrong and then improve your service. So failing is not bad in design thinking, which is very good also at personal level. So let's see into deep a little bit each diamond. So let's start with the first diamond. What's the problem? And let's see the two phases that compose the first diamond. So the definition, the collection of information, and the definition of the areas to focus upon. So defining the problem. Defining the problem is important because it has to be defined in design thinking with and by users. So we really have to understand which are the barriers, the pain they can suffer, and the gain, what is relevant, which are the benefits that our target has coming to us or using our services. It has to be well defined, but the most important thing is that we have to understand first who the user is in order to find them and asking questions, interviewing, brainstorming, focus groups, all the tools that are useful to interview people and understand their needs and their motivation and their needs, basically. Why it's important to try to segment, understand who is your user, because if we say that we just need to find out a man born in 1948, grew up in England, married twice, successful and rich, that have his holidays in Alps and likes dogs, this is not enough, because we can really try to address our service to two different sort of people. So why it's important to go deeper into our target group, because each of these men has its own need that maybe can be clustered, but this information are not enough if we really want to move on, understand better the needs of our target group. So this can be tricky. So that's why we need to understand other ways and use our other tools to interview and to understand the needs of our target group. The first tools I want to share with you and I want to give you is the personas. I think that lots of you already know these tools, but is very useful. So basically is try to really visualize the person you want to address. Also, you can start giving a name, maybe a fantastic way or a fantasy way name, or if you have already an idea about your target group, you have to try to describe like the age, gender, lives, if it's married or not, if it's kids, the type of education, which job, which sector, the leisure time, what does he or she likes to do, passions, which type of media does he or she uses. So try to describe first a general description. Then we can really start to understand the influencer, who this person is influenced by who. influence over. Try to understand the pains, what they don't like, the barriers or the gains, what they might love about us, in order really to understand our strengths, our strong points. How do we help? What need and interest do we fulfill? What aspect of our offer? And try to describe their recent experience in order to understand their experience, their touch point with us. So what we can do is, first of all, try to put into this scheme what we already know because of our experience. And then what we can do is try to interview lots of people of this target, of this segment, and verify if this information that we thought are correct or not, and integrate our information with the new one we receive from our target group. After this, we should have this canvas well detailed and very described. You can put stories, images, quotes, whatever can be useful, because this is our target, and for us it's very important. So along the process, you can really add on this map, this canvas, all the information you can have. Also in the ideation phase, in the implementation phase, if you discover something else, you can really put into your canvas. So this is the first tool I want to share with you in case you don't know, but this is very useful, very simple, but we're really still using it. And then, then let's move on the second phase. So once we collect all the information from all the data, from the information of the needs of our target group, we move on defining the design brief. So what does it mean? It means that we have to systematize all the information that we gain, that we collect, and try to understand what is the right question. I mean, what is the problem and how we can transform this problem into a right question. My suggestion is to start each statement with the how might we. Why? Because how might we is an invitation for inputs, for suggestion and exploration. So instead of deciding that the problem is this one, we transform the problem into a question. How might we solve, or how might we improve the experience of this target during the buying of the ticket, for example? This is just an example, but we are going to see some of them. So during the step, basically you have to create generative questions that build off the insight sentences that your team just created. So the idea is generate multiple questions for every insight statement. So you collect data from your target group, you came up with some insights, intuitions and then you have to transform this intuition into a question, possibly plain, simple, and concise question that starts with how might we. Let's see some examples. For example, how might we design new services engaging low-income parents in after-school education for their children? These are just examples considering design thinking for products, services, spaces. We can use the design thinking for designing different things. How might we redesign a banking system for low-income citizens who have limited knowledge of banks? How might we design a system linking social entrepreneurs from around the world? These are just some examples, but I will give you more in case you want to go deep into that. After you collect all these how might we questions with your team, possibly in a brainstorming mode with post-it, big sheets, roll, rotuladores, pennarello, well, with colors. Sorry, I don't get the word in English, but marker, sorry, marker. And after that you collect all this information, you can select the top 3. My suggestion is just to select the top 3 in a brainstorming session, maybe voting, which is the best way, and try to trust your feeling. Choose that question that feel exciting and help you think of ideas, but also select those questions that have the biggest opportunity for design solution. Is there any problem? Okay, sorry. This is very, very useful. When presented with a problem, resist the urge to find a solution right away. For example, IDEO team, which is one of the best company which describe and discover and develop a design thinking method, who was working with a company which was struggling with retention, instead of focusing on improving retention rates, they asked, how can we make a better employee experience? So by refocusing on the real human needs, they uncovered insights that were better able to drive toward a solution. I hope you understand this shift. This is a mindset shift. It's not just a question of focusing on the problem, but try to reframe a question that can help you to find easier the solution for this problem, or at least a part of the solution. Let's move on. And on the third things is finding solutions. So after that, you decide which is your problem, and you really have your good and right question, you have to understand, to collect, to generate ideas, to find solution. So let's move on the second on the second diamond, which is the ideas, which is to solve the problem. We have to solve the problem, so to find ideas for prototyping. So develop potential solution and then deliver solution that works. So let's see, what is ideation? Ideation is this first phase of first half of the second diamond. Ideation, basically, you can do it in group brainstorming session. So doing simple exercises. Basically, it's better if they are creative, if it's a creative process. The ideation allows you to have a transition from identifying problems to creating solution, and combine the understanding you have, the data, with your imagination. This is very, very important. And also, it's in this phase, what I want to share with you is that it's very important to pushing for a widest possible range of ideas from which you can select, not simply finding a single best solution. So really to collect lots of ideas, and then you will select, because it is a creative process. We don't have to be scared to fail. Sometimes the most strange, weird, or visionary ideas can become true. So don't worry about that. Let's ideate and let's put all the things together. In this phase of generation idea, the first thing you can do is brainstorming. Brainstorming sometimes can be, brainstorming means that you put some people together and you start collecting ideas from each of them in the group. But it's not, even if sometimes can be thought of a wild and unstructured method, is actually a focused activity that involves a lot of disciplines. So there is a method to do that. and I will give you some links in order to go deep into that and find lots of practical tools to organize a brainstorming. And follow the brainstorming rules, but also try to have fun, because this is the stage of the human-centered design process where you really get to tap into your creativity, to be open, and also to be visionary, and also say something that can be impossible, but then maybe can become possible. So don't worry. What I did is also starting with, oh no, this is not the link. I'm sorry, I didn't, but I can exit the presentation and give you this. I can share and see from here, Gamestorming. This is a website which I found very, sharing is paused. Why? Okay. Can you see my
Patrizia, we are still seeing your presentation.
Okay, sorry. I don't know why, but some share. New share. Okay, I found it. Can you see?
Yes.
Great, thank you. So this is a website. You have the link in the presentation. It's called Gamestorming, and inside of this website, you can really find out a lot of practical tools to brainstorm, to generate fresh ideas, to games for opening, games for planning. Sorry. Games from problem solving, from brainstorming. So if you go, for example, in the core games mean we are the ones that you can useful. You can see that there is the object of play, the numbers of players, the material which is required, how to play. So it's really, really well described what you have to do. So even if you are at the early stages of this visual methods and a participatory approach, you can really understand how to do these tools and these methods. So this is very useful. Try to use that. Let's go on the other, on the presentation. Okay. Can you tell me if you see the presentation? Generate ideas.
Yes. Yep. Yeah.
Thank you. So how to generate idea, you can see in this very useful website. It's very important because it's plural, so it's really important that you can try to put together more heads, many heads, and different heads, because if we collect all the people that have the same view, we can't come up with innovative ideas. It's good because it's not hierarchical, this participatory approach like a brainstorming and focus group or others, it's not hierarchical. It's important the quality, but also the quantity. You are free to think differently. It's very useful if you use visualization and metaphor. If you try to find out some playful game, it can really enhance your results. Outsiders are better than insiders because they can really push your boundaries forward, and you can really come up with new ideas and try to keep it open. The second steps of the ideation phase is after having collected all the possible ideas, you can try to select the ones you think are the best. So everyone on the team can vote on their favorites while they are still fresh in their mind. So with your staff, you can start to vote the ones you think you are more useful for you. Then you can determine what to prototype. So your design theme, decide and has thought some big ideas. Now it's time to prototype. So the first step in this process is breaking apart your idea into smaller components that you can test. To do what is important. Sorry.
There is a question from Adriana, Patrizia, if you can read the chat.
Yes, sorry, I have to find out the chat. It's not Q&A, right? More here, chat, okay. Adriana, sorry, how do you adapt? Adriana, you mean adapt the previous one, right? Oh, sorry, how do you this process design tool and methods to the different EU program tips for emerging organization? Okay, yes. Adriana, can I answer to this question at the end of the presentation? Because after you can see some other tools and some other website that can be useful for you. In general, okay, thanks. In general, what we try, how we use this design process. First, at the very beginning of the design process, when, I mean, imagine that you have some expertise in your emerging and in your startup. If you are a group, you have a mission, a vision. You have something, right, in your organization, association. So what you can do is, according to your mission and your vision, is try to start with your group, with your team, to try to focus on your service or problems that you see and that you think that you can respond, and then use this process to understand if the problem you think you can solve with your services are the right one, and collect the needs analysis of your target group, and then move on into this process. In our cases, which we have already services and some prototypes already developed, thanks to European project, most of them, I really have to tell you, what we do basically is, before starting designing an European Union, an European project, we try to think about, we have our experience, so we think that we can solve, thanks to our previous experience, this problem in this way. What we do is try to organize, before designing an EU project, to collect some people that we think that are the target group, the right target group, and ask them into a brainstorming interview on different ways. It depends on how much are they and who they are. What we try to do is to ask them if how we can improve the previous prototype, because we are trying always through our European project to move forward one step to another. So imagine that with the first project, we develop a training course. We use the design thinking to deliver the prototype, to ideate and deliver the prototype. Then at the end, as we saw, we have a prototype. We try to monitor and to evaluate this project, this training path, for example, and then the insight and the information that we have at the end, through and thanks to this evaluation, it becomes a new product. So we start again with this empathy, empathize and this ideation and the collection to move into another project and try to apply to a new funds, adding on something new to the previous one. I don't know if I respond a little bit to your question, Adriana, but please let's move on until the end, and then so maybe it's clearer at the end, but so I can also be clearer at the end. I hope that you can have more insight right now. So let's move on. We are in the ideation phase. So we are in the phase in which we have to determine which is our prototype, what to prototype, and what we can do is to create an experience map. But what does it mean? It means that we try to, we have to understand the type that we try to put to know and to understand the experience that our target group do every time we launch this, at every stage we launch this product. I also put here a journey map, a customer journey map, which is another useful tool that I want to share with you. And I put it into Spanish, knowing that you are mostly Spanish, Italian, and Portuguese, mainly because this is the one I prefer and I love, and it was designed by Asymmetrica, which is another Spanish partner of our European project. But here in this link, you have other customer journey maps. So you can really click on these links and you can find lots of customer journey maps in which you can identify better. What is important for me in this circle is that what you have to do is try to identify every touch point that you have with your customer or client and understand their experience. So you developed an idea, you have an idea, then you have to understand every time that your client has to deal with your product or service and understand how is the experience for him or her. So you have to consider a before. Before is just this part, for example, the time in which, if I have a museum or a performing arts center or something like that, the first engagement phase is when I show how I advertise my service or product, right? So how my client find out the information, how they buy the ticket, how they wait for the day to the event. Each of this is a touch point, and in each phase I have to design the best experience for my client. And also I have to ask myself, how can I facilitate my client to do this task? Like buscar más informaciones, find out more information, or how can I facilitate my client in buying my ticket? How can I facilitate to wait the day of the event? I can share with them, I don't know, news or something, some gossip or something on the back end. I can make their willing increase, their motivation increase to wait their day. This is the before. Then we have the during experience. So once my client arrive to my site, if I have a site or space is a physical space, or if I have during my service, if I develop an app, for example, right before entering, during the event or during the pauses, during the break, you can really understand for each phases, how you can make a better experience for my clients. And you can ask to your clients also for every step what you can improve. This is why I love this circular customer journey map instead of our in the timeline, because it really gives the idea that you have always to have this double loop learning. And once you're at the end, you have to start again. So, and this is during, then you have the afterwards. I mean, after the event, what should I do to engage and keep and maintain alive the spirit, the loyalty, increase the loyalty and the fidelity of my clients? So how can I do just right after my visits, can be virtual or physical, what I can do one day after? Do I send a specific email, sending him other information or other opportunities? Or after 1 week of this visits, if is your case. This is the after. So we have a before, a during, and after. And the question we have to ask always to ourselves is, how can I facilitate my client to do something that I want them to do? I know it's a bit tricky, but this is the way. The last thing is make your prototypes. So once you create your roadmap and your customer journey map, so you know all the touch points with your client and you understand, you try to figure out how to improve their experience, you really try to make your prototypes that enable to share ideas with other people, get feedback and learning how to further refine them. And you have to create a model. That means that you have to really put together a 3-dimensional representations of your ideas using paper, cardboard, pipe cleaners, whatever else you can find. You can also build something, if you have an app, you can really attach and paste to your, you really have to prototype physically or tangible, visible, because this is very, very different, because it's a learning by doing. And then you have your prototypes done and create. What's happened in the last stage? I hope you're not sleeping and I'm not boring you so much, but we arrived to the last phase, which is the developing the solution. So we have to create an action plan to implement. So the first phase, the earlier phase was to create the model, the 3-dimensional model, the prototype. Now we have to develop the solution, so implement, to launch this solution into the market. First of all, to do that, we have to create an action plan. Action plan, it's a roadmap for you, for implementing, that help you to understand what will be required to get your solution out in the world and where your organization will have to seek help. This is very important. So you have to make a roadmap, so really to understand what you need, the timetable and everything. You have to staff your project. That means that you really understand which are the human resources that you need at each stage. You have to build partnership, because for sure you really have to find out somebody that can help you. You have to develop a funding strategy. That means that you have to find out some other opportunities, funding opportunities to reinforce or to implement your solution. And then you have to create a pitch, which means that is a presentation. Pitch is really helpful to present quickly and effectively your idea, because you have to sell your idea and convince people that your idea and your service is something good. And you have to understand why is how to explain and communicate this. I have another link here. Oops, sorry. This is the designkit.org. This is, very useful. Here you can find for each phase that I've just given an overview, a very small and synthetic overview. Here you can really find tools, methods, and explain in deeply about each phases of the design thinking. So you can really use this like it was another training course, a deep training course. So really, I try to select 4 links, but the most relevant one to really go deep into this, to have practical tools and to have practical information. So after you create this phase, you have, after you create an action plan, you have to launch your solution. So take your idea to the next level by testing it in the marketplace. Then you have to getting feedback and iterating, as we said before. It's always a question of asking at the beginning and asking at the end, how was the experience, in order to understand what was wrong and what can be improved. So you have to really be in touch with your audience, with your clients, and iterate again this information through their feedbacks. And then the last level, you have to scale towards impact. So your goal has always been to have big impact. That's what human-centered design is all about, providing effective solution for the people we are trying to serve. So it's important to sit down with your team and map out what success looks like and how to get there. And to do that is really useful also to go back to all these phases. This was the 4th, so the last one. And so now you are ready to prototype. But before doing this, I want to give you to share with you a very big opportunity. I think I'm sharing the screen, yes. So this is Acumen Academy. This is a digital school. And if you go to explore the catalog, let me find out introduction. Okay. If you go to the catalog, you can see that there is the introduction to human-centered design. It's a master. It's free of charge. You can really enroll from right now. You can watch the preview. Is designed and delivered by IDEO, which I told you is the most famous group who deal with the design thinking. It's very, very useful, and you can find out information, tools, workshops, very deepening articles to really go deep into that. And it is very, very useful. So if you are interested, I really suggest to enroll in this. And also there is in November, just the prototyping phase course, which is also free of charge. Duration is 5 weeks, and it's the same. You can just watch the preview and see if you're interested or not. And also I just want to show you the other links I haven't shared before. This is Thedesignkit, also brought by IDEO. You can find mindsets, all the methods, lots of case studies. You can really learn how to use design thinking using these links I shared with you. And then user customer journey map. Also here, it's all the tools, participant, the time you need, all the instruction you need. And then the last one we already share is the Brainstorming website, which has a lot of games that can be that are participatory. And so you can really use the co-design and the participatory approach to develop your service or products. So I think I'm done. I hope you're still alive because I couldn't see you. Thanks a lot. And now, if you're still alive, we can move on for the questions. Are you still alive, first of all? Okay.
Of course, the participants are still live.
Patrizia, while the guys maybe think about some questions, actually the question that Adriana asked you gave me the occasion to underline something that maybe I haven't specified before, but it really can be useful.
Yeah.
And the thing, and I just share very quickly my...
Francesca, please, if you can use the microphone more close to your mouth, we can hear you better.
Is it better now? Yeah, all right. So the thing that I haven't maybe said before is that the logical framework approach and the project cycle management were developed in the US among the 70s and the 80s, but actually more recently the European Commission has developed them, and they became like the common methodology for designing, implementing, and evaluating the projects that the EU Commission is financing. So actually, we have decided to introduce you this method, also because it is quite coherent with some of the calls and of the tenders that the EU Commission generally promotes. And we can see, let's say, this connection with some of the application that maybe you will do in the future. From this slide, like for example, you know that some calls ask the participant to fill a form that is divided in work package. Well, generally, if you decide to use this, let's say, problem and objective 3, the branches often can be easily transformed in the work packages. I mean, the actions that you write down to fulfill the goals that are written in this kind of trees can be can become the structure at the base of the different word packages. Just a quick tip, because actually before I haven't said it.
Yeah. Totally right.
Okay.
Are there any questions? Adriana, do you think you have the answer to your question? You have more insight on that? Bianca says, thank you.
So does any of you have ever tried some of these methodology or approach to involve people in these participatory co-design processes? Have you ever tried something, or maybe use them every day? Do you, maybe we can share something and we can learn something too, or just how to make different things,
or just some tools like personas or the journey map, the customer journey map, or the brainstorming, or how to deal with a focus group also, no?
Yeah.
I mean, I killed them, I think. Guys, please.
At 6.
Yeah, I know.
Okay. For example, I can say that in BAM we always, no, not always, we often use like the focus group tool. And sometimes during a focus group we use some of the tools that Patrizia explained us, like for example the personas or Identikit are one of the tools that generally we try in every manner, in every way to feel, because they are really useful. And we know for sure that a lot of also of cultural institutions still use them to always rethinking and reprogramming their cultural offer. So we can say that it's quite used. Pierluigi.
And also it's very important for the European Union project to really have this human-centered approach, because the spaces for beneficiary is very relevant for the European Commission. So in the best way you can describe your beneficiaries' needs, the most important would be at the end and during the evaluation, because you can really build a project that can respond and can match to their needs. And these things, the evaluator, this is something that the evaluators can see. Can
look for it, maybe.
Absolutely. Of course, you have to. Okay, sometimes.
I think we had some connection problems.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, we are back now.
Okay. No problem. Yeah, I can, in following what Patrizia was saying, for sure. Like for Creative Europe, we perfectly know that the last 7 years of program were really centered on this topic of the audience development. And maybe you will see it in the last part of this webinar, but it seems that concerning the Creative Europe, the new keyword will be cultural welfare. In both of these approach, the central role of people, audiences, and of communities, like in cultural welfare, are central. So starting from the needs, the problems, or the discussion with your audiences, with your beneficiaries or target groups is for sure, how can I say, at the top of the agenda for each person who would like in this moment to apply for some European funds, from my point of view.
Absolutely.
Okay, Adriana also sent us a link. Thank you. We will look at it.
Thank you.
Guys, I think also, we put our email and contacts in the slides, and so we can say, I think, that if you have some questions or some needs for some, just to talk to each other or whatever, you can reach us whatever you want.
Absolutely, we are here to.
Yes, feel free also to contact us through the mail of Chebec project, so we can you will find in the presentation. And I think we have done for today.
Yeah.
Sanna is back as well.
Yeah, sorry. You will receive soon, I think tomorrow, also an email with a link to ask for participate in the coaching paths we are designing for you. And we hope you are interested in this webinar. In particularly was really connected to our coaching paths, because they will be really about project design, finding a new partner, building a budget, reporting, seeing how is built and how is structured an application and so on. So I think tomorrow you will receive, or tomorrow or in these days you will receive an email with the link to ask to participate in this webinar. We kindly ask you to request this participation only if you can dedicate really some hour of your time to this capacity building opportunity, because we have fewer places than the webinars. But I speak with you because you are the persons participating to webinars, and we will with priority give place to you. So thank you to participating to this webinar, and see you with webinars on next Tuesday with the Creative Europe.
Thank you. Thanks to all of you. Bye. Bye bye.
Ciao.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.